My name is Jim, and we're going to be taking a look at this quick lift today on
Kilimanjaro.
This is the quick lift from Irwin. It's kind of the reverse of a clamp. It's meant for lifting stuff up and holding them into position while you're trying to install them or stuff like that. It's rated for 330 pounds. We'll check to see if it can get up to that. And it'll go up to 10 inches high. And if we look at the base here, it actually goes quite low. It'll go all the way down to about a 1/4 inch flush down here. So very useful for getting underneath stuff. You can always stick a little pry bar, pry something up, and then slide this underneath. Very useful that way. So let's talk about how it works. Very simple. You put something over here, squeeze the handle, lifts it up. Like I said, it'll do 330 pounds. When it's time to lower it, you squeeze this trigger here, and it slowly drops it down. Now this also means that you can pretty precisely position things. So if you're trying to get like a door into position to hang, you can squeeze the trigger very slowly, move it up a very precise amount. Same thing with the release. If you go too far, just squeeze it a little bit. You can go up and down very nice and precisely. It has this little lever on the side to be able to slide up and down pretty easily. It's not the easiest lever to use. I think part of that is they don't want you to accidentally hit it while you've got something on here. If you do that, it'll slam to the ground. Not a great situation. But it is kind of awkward to use kind of one-handed. You can, but it's not the easiest thing to use in the world. So to lift stuff up to 10 inches high, pretty useful. I do wish it was a little bit taller. Not so much that I want to lift something up that high, but frequently the spot that I'm trying to lift something from might be a couple inches off the ground. Now, of course, you can always put some blocking underneath that to be able to use it that way, but more height's always kind of more better. The construction on this is actually really nice. It's mostly metal. This base is a nice big piece of metal casting here. It's got this nice metal lifting bracket here, and this bar here is metal as well. In addition, it's got this side plate on both of these sides that are metal, and that's kind of where all the hinges for the mechanisms all are based off of. Now, the handle that you actually squeeze on is plastic. I wish they had put some metal bars in here. Make that a little bit stiffer, and also, if you happen to knock this way, it's not going to break as easily. So it should be plenty sturdy enough to lift the 330 pounds. That Irwin says it will, just with the plastic handle. I'm not super concerned about that, but these things get thrown around a lot and stuff. It would always be nicer to see that handle be metal as well. All right, let's give this a shot. I've got this big old block of aluminum here. This is about 25 pounds, so shouldn't really be any sort of an issue with it. You put it on there, and then you can just squeeze it up. It goes up nice and easily. Now, way from its rated capacity, but it is very easy to lift. So, and this is probably more realistic about what you're going to generally be using this for. If you want to position, a window in place, move something around, lift up the end of a table so you can put a dolly under it, something like that. That's kind of about how much weight. Very easy to use. And then we can go down slowly. And this goes nice and precisely going down and going up. So works super handy that way. Now, like I said, if you've got this some weight on here and you pull this, it's going to drop it. So you got to be a little careful about that, but this is tucked away nicely, so it's not going to be so much of an issue. Let's try it in a little bit of a more real world situation now. All right, so we're at the end of my workbench here to try this in kind of a more useful situation. So sometimes I want to move my workbench around, so I like to pick it up, put it on some dollies so I can move it around if I need to. And my workbench is very heavy. For one thing, this right here is my planer that I've got stuffed inside it. It kind of flips out so I can use it on the end of the workbench. So that's mounted in there. I've got a vise mounted in there. I've got a bunch of tools that are all mounted in here. So the workbench is probably 400 pounds or so. So it's very difficult for me to lift it up to put it on a dolly. And that's where this can come in pretty handy. So I've got it positioned here on top of a scale so we can see how much it's lifting. And it just slides in right there. Now, this brace right here that I'm going to attach it to is pretty much near the top of its range. So if I was doing this where I'd actually want to lift it up pretty far, I'd have to put some blocking underneath here or kind of in here so that I could get it up high enough. But for this, we're just kind of demoing it, so I just slip it right in there. And then if we want to lift this, we can squeeze the handle and up it comes. And now, so you can see this is 270 pounds, give or take. So it's lifting quite a bit of weight. Not super difficult to squeeze, but it's getting on the harder end. And if I wanted to raise this up 10 inches or so, that's going to get pretty tiring to do that the whole way. So I can lift it up nice and slowly, and then I can also lower it nice and slowly. There's no drops. So again, if you hit this quick release, that will drop it, but it's pretty hard to hit without unintentionally. So lower it back down. You can see very nice and controlled, easy enough to do. you know, if you just want to lift something like this up, works very well. One last interesting thing about this jack, works very similar to these quick clamps. And with these quick clamps, you can take the end off here, flip it around, use it as a spreader to push stuff apart. Not the most useful thing in the world because there's no way to slowly release it, but sometimes it comes in handy if you want to push against something. You can use it as a clamp that way. I've had it come in handy a couple times. So I was wondering with this if you could flip it around and use it as a clamp. You can. So there's one bolt down at the bottom here that supports this end plate. You take that off, flip it around to the top, and then it'll work like a clamp. So I've already done that on this one here. That's why you can see this is now upside down. So then we can take it here, lock it on just like that, and it works like a clamp. Now, not the most useful thing in the world. You know, your distance to here is pretty small, or it's pretty big, so you can't clamp on small stuff. You don't get a ton of range. It goes up fairly far, but not tremendously useful. You also can't clamp very tight on it. It doesn't seem to clamp down nearly as tightly as these do. But in a pinch, it might come in handy. I've had this for a couple months now, and I found it to be very handy. I'm frequently working by myself, so trying to lift something into position while I screw it to the wall or hang a door, stuff like that, can be very difficult. Sometimes I'll rest something on my foot, try to, you know, wrangle it in place with my foot while I'm trying to screw it in, stuff like that. This makes life a lot easier. Now, one thing is you probably want two of these so you can lift kind of both sides of something, get it level. That makes it a lot more handy, and they are pretty expensive. So a clamp like this would probably be $30, something like that. Now, it would have plastic end stops on it, probably not metal, but does basically the same job, and those are only like $30. These are about $100. Frequently they'll be on sale for like $75, but it seems like a pretty big price difference for something that's a very similar product. I wonder if that's just this is kind of a new style of thing, and so there's not really that much competition. I think there's only this one, and then DeWalt seems to have one that's very similar as well. So I think that's basically it. I wonder if that's why, and maybe the price will come down in the future, or it could just be that these are more of a specialty item. They are very handy to have. The only complaint I have on this one here is that if you're trying to lift something that's, you know, in the 200, 300 pound range, it can be very hard to squeeze the handle to lift it. But, you know, generally that's not the sort of thing you're going to be using this for. Usually for lighter things, works very easily. I also wish there was kind of a big brother to this. You know, I understand that that's the size this one is, but I do wish that there was something more like a 500 or 1,000 pound version of this that I could use for heavier things, lift up a piece of machinery, something like that. Then you start getting into toe jacks though, you know, hydraulic jacks like that. Those kind of cost a whole lot more. So something in between there would be very handy. I do like this though. I'm glad I have it, and it has come in very handy for a lot of different things that I've done in the past. That's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.